Welcome to the Naked Trading webinar. My name is Walter Peters, and I wrote the book called Naked Forex. And of course, I know many of you. Thank you for spending time here. And for those of you that are new, welcome aboard. We're going to talk psychology today, and this is something that's close to my heart as I spent approximately 9 years of my life studying psychology, which was fun. And then at the end of that, they said, now we call you doctor. So but I studied cognitive psychology. And what I want to talk about today are a couple of things that you may not think about in terms of your cognitions or your thinking and how those interplay with your trading. And at the end of the session, I'm happy to show you my current trades, which of course are naked trades, no indicators involved in these trades. I'll talk about why I took those trades and where they're at, if there's still risk on the table, so to speak, whether the stop's been moved or not yet, or what have you. So that's basically the plan for today. So I'm very excited to have you guys here. Welcome, and let's get started. So what I want to do first of all is I've got some really nice data and experiments to go over today. And one of the reasons why I think this is critical is because it's a way of illustrating these principles. One of the big issues with psychology is that when people say, they say, well, psychologists have found that, if you have information after the fact, you tend to incorporate that information into your how do you say it? Like your story about how the world works. In other words, the hindsight bias, right? We all know that hindsight's 20/20 and so forth. But here's the thing. Most of the time when psychologists come up with these studies and say this is what they found, a lot of people will just say, well, that's obvious. Of course that's what they found. What would you expect them to find? That sort of thing. And there's a lot of this going on. And you don't necessarily see that with other fields such as chemistry or physics or whatever. It's psychology because one of the reasons why is because we all have our own pet theories of why people do things. And if you ever want to see this in action, next time you go to a dinner party or just a cocktail party or whatever, or hanging out with some friends drinking beers, notice what people are talking about. They're talking about why someone does something. Oh, well, he does that because his dad was a real jerk when he was growing up, or she does that because she was just divorced, or whatever. You'll hear people talk about reasons why people do things that they do. So we all have our own pet theories of psychology. And what I'm going to do is present to you the academic data. So I'm going to present to you studies and why we should pay attention to these studies as traders. Okay, so let's get started. And if there's anything that's unclear or whatever, let me know. And I'd like to also invite you to post your comments and points of view as we go, because I'm going to ask you some questions. Okay, you will be tested as we go. So number one, this is probably the most fascinating part to me of studying this area. Let's say that you're sitting in front of a screen, okay, and on your left is a button that's the buy button. You say you're going to buy the market, and on your right is a red button that says you're going to sell the market. Okay. Now, as forex traders, we understand that. As forex traders, we understand that the market goes up and down. Don't tell this to stock traders because they largely only buy. But that was a bit of a joke. But sometimes, of course, they might sell short or trade options or something like that. But largely, most stock traders just say, oh, that's a good company, I think I'll buy. Or, oh, I think the market's going up, I think I'll buy. Whereas we have to actually make a decision whether to buy or sell. So it's a little bit different for us, isn't it? But let's just imagine that you're actually thinking, okay, they present you with a chart, and then they say to you, are you going to buy this market or are you going to sell? Okay. And then you have to push the button buy, the green button on the left, or the red button sell on the right. You know what is interesting about this? If you're hooked up to a functional MRI machine where they look at basically what your brain activity is, they know what you're going to do before you do it. Let me state that another way. Before you push the buy or sell button, the person on the other side of the wall who's looking at your functional MRI output can actually tell you which button you're going to push before you push it. It's like they can see into the future. Do you know on average how far in front of the future they can see what you're going to do? Anyone have any idea? How just take a stab at it. The person that's hooked you up to the MRI, they know what you're going to do, right? They know what you're going to do. How long do they know before you do it that you're going to do it? How much time in advance do they typically have? Any ideas? We can go seconds. So seconds, post the number of seconds you think it is, whether it's, 20 seconds, 1 second, 50 seconds, 12 seconds, whatever it is. How many seconds do they know in advance what you're going to do? 30, says Mark. What do you think? Any guesses? I mean, this blew me away when I heard it. It's not, it's not 15, says Zia. Anyone think any lower than that? George says 3. Nodal says 2. You guys are getting really close. Somewhere between George and Zia. The answer is... The answer is 6. On average, the person who is operating the functional MRI knows about 6 seconds before you push the button that you are going to push that button. Now, 6 seconds is actually a long time. If you think about it, 6 seconds is... That was 6 seconds. That pause that I just gave you. 6 seconds is a long time to know what you're going to do before you do it, don't you think? Now, what's fascinating about this is not that they know what you're going to do 6 seconds before you do it, because they can see your brain activity. What's fascinating is the reason why they know and before you don't know is because they can see where 90% of your brain activity is. 90% of your brain activity, and my brain activity, I'm not immune to this either, is in your subconscious. So most of what you decide, the decisions that you make every day, they come from here, in your subconscious. 90% of your brain activity is, of your decisions come from your subconscious. This is really what's driving what you do every day, which is a really big deal. Now, what's interesting is we all deny that this is true. So even though we know from research that 90% of what we have of our decisions are due to subconscious, what's in our subconscious mind, what we don't do, though, is admit to this. And typically what we will do is we'll do something like this. We'll say, okay, something happens, we make a decision, and then later on we talk about why we made that decision. So you have these reasons why we did what we did. Now let me go ahead and go through another study here to show you exactly how this works. Let's say that you are a guy. Okay, I know some women here, right? But let's just say that you're a guy. And let's say that you like pretty girls in bikinis. Okay? So you're presented with a bunch of cars. Now if you have any little boys in your household, you know that cars are a really big deal for little boys, right? I can definitely tell you that. Cars are the be-all and the end-all in my household. So what this means is, as a boy, you have to decide what's a good car and what's a bad car. So if they present some men, these are grown men, not little boys now, with some cars, and say one of the cars has a girl in a bikini, an attractive girl in a bikini draped across the front of the car, most men will select that car, the car with the bikini lady, as the best car presented. So bikini equals better car. Now, although that might seem, glaringly obvious, but the girl with the bikini on, when she's on the car, that's a better car. That's a faster car. That's a more desirable car. Okay. Now they'll bring the same guys in. So they bring you in, they show you a bunch of cars, and there's one or a couple that have the girl with the bikini on it. The cars with the girl on the front, those cars are better. Okay. Which is why, by the way, if you ever see those car magazines, they always on the cover have a girl in a bikini in front of the car, right? That's just what they do. That's how they sell magazines. They're very smart at what they do. So they show you these cars, and then they bring you back weeks later, okay? Same cars, same photos, except now a different car has a girl in a bikini on it, okay? Which car do you think the guys select this time as the fastest, the most desirable, the best car, the best built, whatever the measure? Which one do they choose now? Any ideas? Of course, they pick the car with the girl in the bikini. Yeah. So they don't pick the same car. They pick the car with the girl in the bikini. So before, let's say they picked the Porsche, and then this time they picked the BMW. Before the Porsche had the girl in bikini on it, and now the BMW has a girl in bikini. So, and now here's what's interesting though. It's not, this part of the study isn't interesting. Here's what's interesting. The guys will make up reasons why that car was better. So they never say the car's better because there's a girl in a bikini on it. What they say is, well, that car's got 2.7 liter turbo engine, or that car's got an accelerometer, or whatever. I'm not really into cars. I don't know what all the terms. Well, that car's an electric car, so the acceleration is superior to a diesel, or whatever it is. They're going to say those reasons. They're going to give you plenty of reasons why that car is better, and none of them relate to the fact that the girl in the bikini's on there. And so what this tells you is that there are reasons why we do things, and then there are the reasons that we give for why we do things, and they're not necessarily the same. In other words, our subconscious thoughts and beliefs determine what we do, and then consciously we make things up out of thin air why we did that. Now, let me state that another way, because this is really important for trading. We do things, we take action based on what's in our subconscious beliefs, and then we validate those actions. We make, we make up reasons why we did what we did later, and those have nothing to do with the true subconscious reasons, which are why we did what we did. So when we take an action, for example, you say, well, why did you sell the euro? Well, I sold the euro because of the fundamental data coming out of Greece is really poor, and it looks like the ECB is going to keep rates the same. And by the way, it's, on this resistance level and whatever, that's why I sold the euro. But, it could be something completely different why we did that. Okay? All right. So let's push on. So that's number one I wanted to get across here, is that most of what happens in your brain is in your subconscious area, and that's why you do what you do. And not only that, but we don't know those things. I mean, by definition, subconscious, we don't know what they are, but we will come up with turkey brain reasons why we do what we do, which are totally irrelevant and have nothing to do with why we do what we do. Okay? So that's very critical. Why you keep charts on the first minute? Yeah, Christian's wondering, why do you keep charts on the 1 minute chart? Something subliminal here. I love it. I love it. I like it because it keeps us enthralled. Keeps you like, whoa, locked into the chart, right? Wow, what's it gonna do next? Okay. Now what I want to talk about is a different idea, not necessarily subconscious. And at the end of this, we're going to tie all these together for trading, okay? So we just got to go through the psychology first, and then we'll tie it all together. All right, the next thing is this idea called priming. Okay, priming is this idea that basically based on what what we see, our actions change or our beliefs change. So, for example, let's say that you walk into a room and you see some photographs in the room of children. You will, if you're like most people, you will tend to become more conservative in that sort of environment, right? In that sort of environment, you're much more likely to become conservative. Why would you become conservative in that environment? Well, there are reasons like children remind us of, photos of kids remind us of the future of the kids, how they should be kept safe, and so forth. Same thing happens, though, if you walk into a room and there's some hand sanitizer. Hand sanitizer makes people act more conservative, too, because, of course, it reminds us of all those nasty germs that are out there. So if we see hand sanitizer or photos of kids, we become much more conservative. This is an example. These are just two examples of priming. So these things that we see, right, prime us to act in a certain way. So if you ask someone a question about, illegal immigrants coming into your country, for example, right, and they ask you in the presence of a photo of kids or hand sanitizer, you're much more likely to adopt a conservative answer and reasoning than you would otherwise if that photo wasn't there of the kids or if the hand sanitizer wasn't there. Seems totally unrelated, but actually it is. So that's again, that's another key piece here, but we're going to come back to it at the end when we tie it all together for trading. Next thing I want to talk about is this idea of believing or beliefs. Okay, this is absolutely critical. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, as humans, we must believe. It is critical to our survival. Beliefs are what we need to have in order to survive. And let me explain why this is true. We have to believe, for example, that gravity is going to be constant, and that it's not going to be that gravity on our planet is on for the next hour and then all of a sudden it goes off, right? We just believe that gravity is always going to be there, right? Otherwise, we'd go crazy wondering when gravity is going to suspend and we're all going to start floating around or whatever. That's an example. We have to believe that there's a tomorrow, that there is a future, that it's not uncertain that the sun's going to come up, right? We have to believe that this is true, that there is a tomorrow. And we also have to believe that if we're a child, that our mummy's going to come back, right? We have to believe that our mummy's going to come back. We have to believe that that if she goes away, she's going to come back. That our primary caretaker loves us and she's going to be back for us. There's a whole cult in child psychology that studies the interaction between the child and the mummy and determines whether or not there's a good relationship there. Then it's called attachment theory. If you're interested in that, you can Google that and look it up. But basically, they all look at this idea of the situation when there's a mummy and a child, and then they're separated, and then they get put back together, and a stranger comes in. It's called the strange situation. There's a whole bunch of studies on just that idea, right? But the important thing to remember here is that as humans, we need to believe. We need to believe. We're not wired to not believe. We're wired to actually believe in things. Now, why is this important? I'll explain. One of the reasons... Oh, yeah. Christian says, I heard you on the podcast today with Darren talking about priming. Yeah, we did talk about that recently. You're right. There's a little bit of a lag when we record those, Christian, and then they're posted. So I wasn't sure if it was already out yet. Yeah, cool. So that's absolutely right. So Mark says, why does it take so long, 6 seconds, to make the action? Do we try to justify ourselves? No, I think the point, Mark, and I'm not a neuroscientist, so I could be off here, but I think the idea here with these is that you make... Yeah, I think you're right, actually. Yeah, so you make the decision to buy or sell, and then you actually do it, and then you start coming up with justifications for it. Yeah, I think that's I think that's fair enough. I think that's a fair enough assessment. Absolutely. Um, is that we start to justify it, and so we come up with the reasons. So we've got the gut feel, the subconscious tells us what to do, and then we come up with the reasons why. It might be the same thing when you find your partner. You go, well, I really like her because of this, and that. But you've already really decided that she's the one or whatever, or he's the one or whoever. That's the kind of thing that happens is you justify it after the fact, after you've already decided. So um, priming is a big deal in trading too, as we'll find out. So remember, so just to recap here, so far we know that 90% of what your brain decides to do is in your subconscious. You can find out what someone's going to do 6 seconds on average before they actually do it. We also know that if you prime a situation, that situation it's going to change what your beliefs are just based on the priming, right? Just based on the priming. The girl with or the car with the girl in the bikini, or the room with the photos of kids, or the hand sanitizer. And we have a lot of reasons to believe. We have to believe. That's part of who we are. We must believe. Now let's talk about one more thing that's really important, and this is this idea of authority. Authority is absolutely critical for us as humans, because when an authority comes along, we will pay attention and we will defer. Not only that, but the area in our brain, which is the area in our brain which basically says, hold on here, take this with a grain of salt, be careful here, watch out, make sure that this is true before you accept it. That area of the brain is turned off when we're in the presence of an authority figure. That's really weird, isn't it? That's a weird thing to do. That as soon as you're in the presence of an authority, you just go ahead and defer to them, and you don't really think critically. Why did you put authority in red? Is that psychological? Absolutely. Absolutely. So this is a great example of authority. There was a study where they studied cancer patients that have terminal cancer, right? So I'm sorry, you're going to die, you have cancer. It was a 3-year study, longitudinal study, and they studied the doctors and the patient's beliefs. And they gave the doctor a subliminal message CD that said things like, you're healing, your body's getting better. It was all positive stuff, right? And they said, can you please give this to your patient? Okay. All of the doctors agreed to do it. But remember, some of these doctors thought that this was a bunch of hooey, it's a bunch of BS, it wasn't going to do anything. And some of the other doctors actually thought, this is important, there's a mind-body connection, and this can really help my patients, okay? So let me ask you a question. If you were to guess of the patients, that all these patients received these subliminal CDs, right? And the doctor gave it to them. Now, if you were to guess what was more important, if it were that the doctor believed that the CD would help the patient, or if it were that the patient believed that the CD would help, which one's more important? Which one is more important? That the doctor believes that the CD will work, or the or the patients? The doctor, exactly. The patient. Oh, we got a vote for patient. Most of the votes coming through are for doctors. Yeah. So here's the thing, guys. Remember, these guys were told they're going to die, right? Of the patients that believed that the CD would do good for them, if their doctor believed, if the patient believed that the CD would do them good, then something like 30% of them survived 3 years later. Okay, they were still alive. But of the patients that believed the CD would do good for them, and they also had a doctor that also believed that the CD would help, 100% of those patients were alive 3 years later, after they were already told they were going to die. Guess how many of the patients were alive if their doctor believed that the CD was a bunch of BS and wouldn't help them? How many patients were alive if the doctor believed that the CD wouldn't help at all? It's not the placebo effect. No, they all died. So let me state this another way. It's not the placebo effect. It can't be the placebo effect because of the study's design. If it were the placebo effect, then all of the patients would have the same outcome, whether or not their doctor believed that it would work or not, right? So it can't be the placebo effect. What we're talking about here is the interaction between beliefs and authority. If your doctor believed that the CD would do good to you, then that was more important than whether or not you believed or not. What you believed wasn't that as important. It was twice as important that your doctor's belief in the CD, in the subliminal messages, than your beliefs. So really what determined what happened to you as a patient, as a cancer patient, was whether or not your doctor believed it was going to work. This is a fascinating study, and there are many more like it. But the important thing to get across here is that there are people in your life that are affecting your trading, and they probably don't even trade. Let me state that in another way. Someone in your life affects your trading outcome, your wins and losses, and they may not even trade. They might not even know what a pip is. They might not even know what an engulfing candle is, or how you would write out Aussie Swissy, right? They have no clue, okay, how you would do that, and yet they may be affecting your trading. We'll get back to that in a moment. But for right now, I just want you to think about that the fact that your doctor's beliefs determine whether or not you live or die with a subliminal message CD is, to me, fascinating. Let's push on. Okay, let's push on. The last thing I want to talk about here is there's a famous study. Many of you have probably heard of it if you took a psychology class at university. It's often in like introductory psychology, and this is, or maybe social psychology course. This is called the There was a lady named Kitty Genovese. I think that's how it's spelled. Does anyone know the story of Kitty Genovese? Anyone at all remember the story? Where it was, what happened? No, really. It's pretty famous, but it's probably one of those ones that, like, when I tell the story, you'll have recognition memory for it. You don't have recall memory for it, but you go, oh yeah, I heard about that. All right, nice. Okay, a couple of no's here. Okay, cool. So Kitty Genovese, it's a sad story, but Kitty Genovese was in New York, and Kitty Genovese was brutally raped and murdered, and hundreds of people watched it. You can Google it, no doubt. Hundreds of people watched her get brutally raped and murdered, and everyone thought. So some psychologists came around and said, "Okay, this is really weird. It's not like there was no one around. There were dozens of people around, literally dozens of people around that saw this happening, and nobody did one thing, and she ended up dying because nobody did anything. And so what they did was they decided to study this and say, well, what's going on here? This is some weird thing. Is it just the people in New York are, they don't take action, or what's going on here? Well, this is where the bystander effect came from. So the bystander effect bystander, not bystander. Bystander effect. Bystander effect is that the more people watching an event, the less likely someone will step forward. So I recall one time being at Disneyland, and I was with my mom, and someone was choking from they had some they were eating some steak and they were choking on the piece of steak, and my mom ran over there and gave the person the Heimlich maneuver, which I guess is not really considered the right thing to do now. I guess there's a different technique, but at the time it was considered the right thing to do. And that person was literally sitting at a table with dozens of relatives. Okay, there's like 15 people. They were all eating together, and everyone just watched this person as this person was starting to basically choke to death. And my mom we were a few tables over, and she ran over there and did the Heimlich, and this piece of steak flew out of the person's mouth, and she lived. Now, what's interesting about is that this is the same thing was in effect here, the bystander effect. The more people watching something, the less everyone thinks, oh, someone else will do something. Oh, someone else will jump in. And someone else will do something. And nobody does anything. And the more people that are there, the more likely no one's going to do anything. So if there's 2 people watching, someone's likely to do something. If there's 200 people watching, it's like everyone's kind of divided the responsibility amongst the 200 people, and they feel like, it's not really it's not really my responsibility. So that is what the bystander effect is all about. And we are, by definition, herd animals. One of my favorite things to do is to go to this website. I've actually linked up well, I'll show it to you in a moment, okay? I've actually, if you go there, it will forward you to another site, but which is on a broker, Owanda's, but I don't want to get into that right now. I'll get into it in a moment. What I want to do is, again, talk about some other studies that illustrate that we are herd animals. And one of the things that I do as a trader is I pay attention to the herd, and this is where I go to pay attention to the herd. What I do is I often go, okay, what? Well, I'll get into that in a moment. I'll get into that when we get into the points on trading. But for right now, there's 2 more studies I want to tell you about. They did a study where you walk into a room, right, and they say, we want you to learn a new technique for learning a language. It's a way to learn a language really quickly or something like that. So you walk into a room and there's a bunch of other people in there too, and you think that everyone in there is just going to learn how to learn a new language. Okay, it's an experimental technique to quickly learn language. Oh, that's cool. I'll go and learn a new language. If I can do it quickly. You go and sit in the room, and then some smoke starts coming out of a ventilation hole, a vent in the wall, starts pouring into the room. Now, what you don't know is everybody else in the room is actually part of the experiment, and you are the only one that's not. So you're the only subject in the experiment. Everyone else is a stooge. And so everyone else just kind of sits there, and because you look around and you see that no one else is concerned that there's smoke pouring into the room, that you don't, try and feel the wall, see if it's hot, open the door, look on the other side, and see if there's a fire over there, anything like that. You don't do anything. You just kind of don't worry. You just don't worry about it either. You just kind of let it roll. Same thing with another study where you go into a room and the instructor draws a line up on the chart. I'll show you. It's like this, actually. Oh, wait, not that one. I'll do this one. I want to show you exactly what it looks like. This would be good. So you go, okay. Here's a line right here. Here's a purple line, right, on the chart. And here's another line right here. And here is a what? Blue? Blue, yeah. Blue line. Actually, we'll make it like this. So you draw these 2 lines. The instructor draws 2 lines on the chart, and then he calls on everyone around the room and say, okay, which line is longer? Is it the blue line or the purple line? First person says purple. Second person says purple. Sorry, no. They say which line? Yeah, which line is longer? So the first person raises their hand and says, it's blue. Blue line's longer. Next person says blue line's longer. Next person, blue line. They come to you, right? And what you don't know, again, same like the smoke study, you are the only person who's a subject in the study. Everyone else is a stooge, so they're all in on it. And then you say the blue line's longer. You just go along with everyone else. Why? because we are herd animals. And if you want to see the herd operating in the markets, you can go to here and see when is the herd really traveling in one direction, because as traders we can really take advantage of that. Probably don't have a lot of time to get into this, but I do want to get into it when we get into what you can do in terms of your psychology. So let's sum this up and let's tie it all together for traders. What does this mean for traders? Okay. Well, number one, we talked about buying and selling. We talked about the fact that your decisions are made in your subconscious and that they are made before you even really know why you're making them, because you have to make up the reasons why you're making that decision, right? Later on, 6 seconds later is when you go, okay, I'm going to do this. But you've already decided. So how is this? This is because you have subconscious beliefs that determine what you do every day, right? So how do you know? How can you tap into your subconscious beliefs? How do you know what's going on in there? There are some advanced techniques, advanced ways to do that, but probably the easiest way to see them is just simply look around and say, okay, if I believe that it's possible to make money trading, then I will have made money trading. And if I don't believe it's possible to make money trading, then I will be losing money as I trade. So one way to see what your subconscious beliefs are is to simply see what are your actions. What are your actions? What's happening in your life? Are you making money? Are you losing money? What's going on here? That's probably the most important thing to find out what's going on is, well, what's happening? Is it working? Am I doing something that's working? Am I making money or am I losing money? Right? That tells me what I believe about how good I am, how worthy I am of profits, how good I am as a trader, how likely it is to make money in the markets, or even things like whether I think I should be a wealthy person. Maybe I think wealthy people are jerks, so I don't get it, right? So these are, or I'll be a jerk. So these are the sorts of things that are happening down below the surface, but you can see them by seeing what your actions are. What are your results? What do they look like? Because your results are going to be 90% based on what your subconscious beliefs are, okay? Your actions, what the results that you get are all due to what's happening down here, all right? By the way, this person... Yeah, Christian, this is exactly what I do. So Christian's saying that Christian looks at MyFX book or Awanda and other sites to see if 60 to 70% are on one side, and then you go in the opposite direction. I wait for 85%, Christian. So I'll go to the Awanda one, which is linked up here. This will send you the Awanda page. And when 85% of the people are going in one direction, I'll go in the opposite. It's the easiest way to really see the crowd. Most people are in retail forex are losing money. So if you see a lot of people trade, then you definitely want to get on the other side, because that's where the simple thing to do. Yeah. So absolutely, I'm totally with you on that one, Christian. That is definitely right. Yeah. So there you go. Okay. Next. So that's number one. So number one here is you want to. So there's other ways too, guys. I don't want to just leave you with one way, but there's other ways too to discover and overwrite your subconscious beliefs, right? You can go to a hypnotherapist and work on these. You can use subliminal tools like subliminal music or sounds. There's lots of ways to overwrite your beliefs with better ones or more profitable ones or whatever. But basically, your actions are going to tell you. Your results will tell you what your beliefs are. So if your results are not quite what you want, probably the most efficient way to change your results is to actually change what's going on in the subconscious. That much is very clear for traders. Number two, what primes you for trading? Now this is interesting. So remember we talked about priming. So what primes you for trading? What do you do? What are some of your, I'm going to ask you, what are some of your routines? What are the things that you do before you trade, or maybe when you take a trade? What are some of the things that you say to yourself? What are some of the things that you do before you take a trade? What's your ritual? What do you do? Go ahead and post those in the chat. Maybe you watch a TV channel, or maybe you read a website, or maybe you go through a routine of whatever. I don't know what it is, or what's something that you seem to do every time when you sit down to trade? Josh says, and thank you, Josh. Review trading rules before a trading session. Same thing that Noddle says, refresh myself on my trading plan first. Yep, brilliant, brilliant. It's very good. Anyone else do anything different than looking at their plan? Coffee, says Okita. Make sure I'm not tired. That's really good. Yep. This is a big deal for Forex traders because the market keeps trading, right? It's really tempting for me to stay up for another 4 hours right now and watch New York come in, but that's probably not a good idea, right? I must first check FX Street to see what the experts are saying, says Maxwell. Okay, so what I want to talk about here is what a lot of people do, maybe more stock traders, no distractions from the kids, hard. Yeah. Tell me about it, Noddle. That's why I got an office, actually, just because of that. New York is closed today? Is it? I don't think so. Why would New York be? I don't think New York is closed today, is it? Oh, is it? Veterans Day. Okay, there you go. Cool. Kids, yep. Okay, so priming. What is your routine? Well, here's what you can do as a trader to prime yourself for better results. Number one is, do you read the news? Now, what I would like to do is, next time you see the news, just pay attention to something. Pay attention to the percentage of positive versus negative news. Okay? Next time you look at the news, ask yourself this question. Is this news that I'm watching on TV or in the business paper or whatever, is it priming me for negative or positive news? Right? Ask yourself another question. When you take a trade and the trade starts to go against you, what do you say to yourself? What's your self-talk? Is it, you take a trade and it starts going against you, do you start saying things like, oh, here we go again. Oh, I knew I should have gone the opposite direction. Oh, why does this always happen to me? My broker's trying to spike me again. Whatever it is, right? What do you prime your trades with yourself? Because we all sort of talk to ourselves, right? Or is it only me? Don't tell me I'm crazy. I'm the only one that does this. So you want to take a step back and think about what you're saying when you take your trades. Are you giving yourself positive or negative talk? Are you paying attention to positive or negative news? If you pay attention to the news, is it largely positive or negative? Have a look next time you see, and let and write down. Okay, well, it looks like I'm reading the newspaper here, the business paper, or whatever, and 30% of them are positive and 70% of the stories are negative. Or I'm watching Bloomberg TV or Sky News or whatever, and how many positive versus negative news stories are coming out. What you'll typically find is that most of the news is negative, and the reason why is because that gets people's attention. They say if it bleeds, it leads, right, in the newspapers? Yeah. Instead, what you could do is you could do something like read just a page or two out of the Market Wizards books and get inspired by consistently profitable traders, very well-known traders. You could read one of my favorite books is the one called Everyday Traders by Nick Raj. It's an Australian-focused book, but again, it's the same thing as in Market Wizards. It gives you a look inside of what profitable traders think about and how they approach the markets. Just priming yourself with that can make a big difference to watching the news that's so negative. Oh, China's going to collapse or whatever. Just doing that, just taking a page or two out of a biography, an inspiring biography. Maybe you want to read one of the trader biographies or something like that. That could That could definitely help. Like Victor Niederhofer or the predictors or what's another one? The reminiscences of a stock operator, those sorts of things. Affirmations can also do it. You can't always get what you want. Yeah, exactly. You can't always get what you want. So if you start saying stuff like that, um, that can affect you via priming, right? And then the last thing that I want to add here is what we talked about a little bit already, which is what is the crowd doing? Pay attention to what the crowd's doing. This is where I go to do that, which is the Awanda site. But obviously, there's other places like FX Book and other brokers will give you this data. The reason why I want to do that is because I want to be in the small group. I don't want to be in the big group. I don't want to be in the herd that's running off the cliff. I want to be in the small group that decide, nah, I don't want to run that way. I don't want to go in that direction and run off the cliff. I want to go down here. It looks a little bit nicer over here. And one way that I do that is I use the 85% rule. So when 85% of the traders are going long or whatever short, here, I'll show you. I'll bring it up. Let's take a look. Here, I'll bring it over for you guys to see. There we go, silver. Okay, so you should be able to see it on my chart. Silver is at 81.55%. So when it gets to 85, remember, if it's at 85%, then this is definitely a bearish market. So the blue line are the people that are buying, and the orange line here are those that are selling, right? Gold is also creeping up there, but the rest of them are not even close. So silver is really that market where I'd say, okay, I'm interested in a short on silver, right? Does that make sense? No, you don't place your trade against the negative news. You place your trade against the crowd, right? All right. Now, what I want to do, guys, is I want to give you an opportunity to present any chart that you want to, let me know what you want to see. I'll show you my charts. I've got a couple of trades. I got a sell on the euro. That was triggered yesterday at 90, at 106.90. It broke through this level, and it's a sell on the euro. I've also got a sell on the weekly chart on the euro. That just hit target 1 yesterday. Sorry, yesterday, which is this candle, not last week, this week. That hit target 1, and I'm waiting for target 2 down here. So I moved my stop loss to 1.11. I sold at 111.10, and I think my target was at 75, 106.75. So my second target is at 105 down here. So that was off this kangaroo tail there. So that's been moved to break even. It's at a plus 10 pip stop. The euro CAD is another one. I'm waiting for 1.3930. It hasn't hit that first target yet, unlike the euro. Pound CAD was also a sell. Here, it broke this trend line, came back up, touched it. This was my sell off this big red candle right here. Stop loss at 205. Sold at 201.61. It's at 201.15 right now. I'm waiting for 1.96. It got really close down here, but didn't quite get there. Went as low as 97.32, but didn't get to 96. Waiting for 96 and 93. Those are my targets on that one. And I did have a loser on this silly Singapore dollar. This was a weekly trade, but I actually got out today on a retrace during Asia down to 1.41. It went to 1.4181, and I've been waiting for it to go to 1.4190. So I sold at 39.14, and I got out at 1.4190, which for me was a big win because my stop loss was at 43.50, right? So I saved myself 260 pips, I think. 260 pips? No, 160 pips. Sorry, I saved myself 160 pips on that loser. So that was a big fat loser. It was on the weekly, but I don't want to show you. I could show you if you want to see it. So which charts would you guys like to see? Well, we still have a few minutes here, I think. So which charts would you like to see? I'm happy to go over them for you. Pound, yeah. Pound's really interesting on the 4-hour. Pound I like on the 4-hour. If the pound can get up to this box, see this big blue box I've drawn on the chart here? This is a significant resistance area around 1.5230. And if it gets up there, I will sell. If it gets up to this where this arrow is and it prints a bearish candle, I will sell. I could certainly do it on the daily, but it also might happen on the 4 hour. So if it gets up there on a 4 hour and prints a bearish candle, what does a bearish candle look like? It looks like this big red candle here, or this red candle here, or a long wiki type candle like this little wiki type one. I don't want it to close above this 1.5233 level. If the candle closes up there, then this is no trade. It's not going to happen. My stop loss will go at the middle of the box, which is right here, 1.5512. But if the market prints my signal candle up here, falls back down, then comes back up and closes inside the box, I'll actually close it long before it hits my emergency stop. This is really just an emergency stop. It's not really a, I don't want to see the market go there. It's just in case it does something crazy when I'm sleeping. Really, that's what that's all about. Okay, cool. The yen. So hopefully that makes sense on the pound. The yen, says Maxwell. Yen's got also kind of an interesting chart. This had a box right here, and I was kind of waiting for it to get out of that box and bounce. It never really pulled back to the box. I think what you've got here is a bullish flag if you look at the 4-hour yen. So this is kind of a, let's wait for the market to break out of this. So what would typically happen is it would break out, trade up here for a while, come back down and bounce off this channel, right, off this flag. And the buy is usually on the bounce, like right there. So trades up here for a few candles, comes back down and goes boing, like that. Kind of like what happened on the pound CAD. This is why I took the pound CAD. It was traveling along this trend line. It broke through the trend line, came back up and touched it. So that's the reverse of what I'm talking about on the yen, right? See, that's the reverse. It bounced off this level. That was the trigger candle. So that's kind of same thing. What was the other one we had here? CAD yen. Euro 4-hour. So euro is I've sold twice the euro now. I've sold on the daily and I've sold on the weekly. 4-hour doesn't show me much. I would say this. If the 4-hour were to print a bearish candle up in this area where my blue box is, that would be a pretty nice spot to sell. That's around 1.0830. If it were to get to 1.0830 and print a bearish candle, I would think that would be a good place to short. It's got to be a big fat red candle though, like this one right here. Something like that would be the ticket. CAD yen. Yeah, I'm waiting for a busted kangaroo tail, which is if it closes above the high, which is 93.24. If it closes above 93.24, then I want to go long. Okay, that's what I'm not thinking this is a short. I'm thinking this is more likely a long, really. This is a tiny candle. It happened on Monday. It didn't even take out this high over here. So a lot of reasons why I think this is actually not a double top, but more likely a breakout. We'll see. We still have to see a close above that candle. Some say December will not happen. Yeah, I know. December rate hike for the Fed is going to be really interesting. It's going to be, I think what I'll do is I'll probably trade that interest rate decision. So I think I'll do a news trading thing for that. Normally we do the non-farm payroll, but I think we'll do it for that one because there's enough people on both sides of the fence that no matter what happens, it'll probably be a good strong move, a good news move. Because I think people are split. I think people, when the jobs report came out last week, they're thinking, oh, they're definitely going to raise it, and they've been leaving the door open. And now people are saying, well, if the stock market's not so hot, maybe they won't or whatever. I don't know. But I do know that we can use the 5-minute naked news trading system on that interest rate announcement, probably no matter what they decide. So that will be fun. Yeah. Yeah, more and more are looking only on jobs. Yeah, but it's more than this. Yeah, I think. Look, what I've heard is that it's not a given, and that it's not just jobs. It's also what are the markets doing, right? Because they don't want to make everyone else mad if they, trigger a bit of a crazy move in the markets. Absolutely. Exactly. Christian is on it. Yep. All right, guys. I really appreciate your time. I hope you have a wonderful trading week. We hope to see you at the next webinar. Thanks a lot for your time, and we'll see you next time. All right. See you, Mohammed. Bye, Josh. See you, Jack. See you, Hans. Bye, Krill, Pep, Scott, Theodora, Tico, Zia, Alexander, Cobus, Carlos, Dirk, Dwayne, Mark, May, Steve, Thorsten, Wayne. Thanks, guys. See you later. Bye. Take care. Bye.